Howdy folks, Congo here, back with another episode of Simple Guides, and tonight we will be talking about the Midway. This is the Tier 10 American aircraft carrier. Like the previous videos, we'll be talking about the equipment, modules, commander skills, signals, and then I'll be taking it into a random battle and showing you how I would play it in that particular battle. So, for the Midway, it's a Tier 10 carrier. Like the other Tier 10 carriers, and like all carriers, it's one of the few ships at Tier 10 that actually has quite a lot you have to research. So you have to upgrade all of the planes from Tier 9 to Tier 10. And in this case, I would start with the dive bombers, actually. In previous, like on the Lexington, you upgraded the torpedo bombers. But for the Midway, I would actually upgrade the dive bombers. This gives you more health, more speed, of course, but it gives you 4 more spaces on the deck, so you go from 14 to 18, and it gives you 3 extra planes in the attacking wave, so you have 12 in the attacking wave as opposed to 9. Following that up, I would then take the torpedo bombers. This gives you more health, more speed, of course, but gives you a couple more deck spaces, but it changes your attack flight from 2x8 to 3x9. And this is just, it's nicer. You drop 6 torpedoes instead of 4 torpedoes because your torpedo bombers at Tier 10 on the Midway actually drop 2 in the payload per plane rather than 1 like on the other tiers. And then finally, I would upgrade the HVARs from the Corsairs to the Bearcats, the HVAR rockets. And then if you want to research the Tiny Tims, you can. Again, much like on the Lexington, when you first get access to these, I would not use the Tiny Tims. They are way too situational, and you're relying heavily on RNG to get those huge damaging volleys on destroyers. And it's much easier to just use the HVARs for the more consistent damage. You could use the Tiny Tims. They are effective against larger ships with the increased penetration of the rockets and the higher alpha damage. But for me, it's not worth doing more damage to larger ships than not being able to do enough consistent damage to destroyers. And that's what I like, is consistent damage. Sure, I won't be able to do huge volleys to larger ships, but I can still rake their superstructure and maybe set a fire or two. And that's mostly what the rockets are used for, is just stripping some of the AA on the larger ships and just setting fires. They're not really for damage. And then they're incredibly useful against destroyers. As for upgrades, pretty standard first 2 upgrades. Air Groups Modification 1, Aircraft Engines Modification 1, pretty standard stuff. Again, Aerial Torpedo Modification 1, this is to help with the incredibly slow torpedo speed on the American carriers with 35 base knots. With this, you get 37. And then with torpedo acceleration, which we'll get to in the commander skills, this bumps it up to 39, which is much more usable. It does boost your arming distance up to 570 meters, which is a bit larger, but is still much, much more usable than like on the Japanese carriers, for example, where you have almost 1,000 meters or so. So 570 is kind of in that range where it's like it's usable still, but it's not so much of a nuisance that you need the arming reduction skill. If you want to take it, you could, but I don't personally. 4th slot, dive bomber modification 2. Again, more HP to the dive bombers. Super important. Keep the dive bombers alive longer, drop more payloads, do more damage, set more fires. Pretty standard stuff. Then for the 5th slot, I have Concealment Expert. Again, I like to take my concealment of my carriers down. This takes it from the base like 15.6, 15.8, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's a huge concealment on the Midway, down to a more comfortable 13.8. This is pretty consistent concealment in terms of what the Haku has. The MVR, I think, sits around like 12 or so, like that. So 13.8 is still very usable. It gives you enough time if you get spotted to know that you're spotted by a destroyer, but it also means you aren't spotted from space, and then you could be shot at from across the map. And then finally, I have Midway's unique upgrades, modified external hardpoints. This just gives my dive bombers more speed, and they do a bit more damage. If you don't have this upgrade, I would just run Flight Control Modification 2. This is just a flat 5% speed increase to all of your squadrons, whereas this is 10% speed to only your dive bombers. So this is nice for if you want to basically focus on what I'm doing, where I'm using the torpedo bombers to set a flood, and then as soon as they repair it, coming with the dive bombers and striking for permafires. If that's not your playstyle, or you're just not good at that, or whatever the case may be, then Flight Control Modification 2 is just overall better, as it helps all of your squadrons. Whereas with the unique upgrade, I'm putting all of my eggs in the dive bomber basket, basically. I'm reducing the speed and therefore the effective survivability of my other two squadrons to buff the speed and damage of my dive bombers. So this is what I'm going to be trying to do, is set floods and then come in with fires. So that extra speed helps me to get to the target faster and set those fires, because the less downtime you're saving, basically, the less time their cooldown has when they're not on fire, basically. Alright, and then for commander skills, I am running Halsey, actually, on my Midway. And then for the skills, Air Supremacy, Improved Engines, Aircraft Armor, Dive Bomber Flight Control. Again, this is for the 5% speed of the dive bombers. Again, I want the dive bombers fast, so that I can get from the carrier to the target that I've forced the repair to set a fire as quick as possible, so there is less downtime from when they are on fire, or when they're repaired the flood, to when they're on fire. I want that time where their repair is cooling down but they're not on fire or flooding to be as short as possible. Following that, site stabilization is actually very useful on the American carriers, much like on the Lexington and Ranger. The Americans have a very long arming time on their torpedo bombers, and their dive bombers are fairly lengthy, and their rocket planes are alright. This just helps with the torpedo bomber aiming reticle. It tightens it up faster, and you have a higher chance of hitting torps on the bow or the stern, which don't have torpedo protection and therefore have a much greater chance of causing a flood. And to that, Swift Fish. Again, like I said, with the equipment, this is for torpedo speed. Get them up to 39 knots, and it makes it harder for some of the destroyers to actually evade your torpedoes. Whereas without this, there's a lot of destroyers that can evade your torpedoes because they're so slow. With this limits the number of destroyers that are actually just outright faster than your torpedoes to a much smaller list. And it is much more useful. If you don't want the Swift Fish, either because you don't torp destroyers or you just don't want the extra speed, then you could take like the arming distance if you wanted to. These two skills, Swift Fish and Torpedo Bomber, on the American carriers are very much personal preference in which you feel like you want. Do you want more speed, or do you want to drop them closer on larger ships? Alright, and then for signals, much like on the Lexington, I'm running Heal Flag, Fire Flood flags. Again, super useful. American carriers, all about the dots. Damage over time, fires and floods. Having a higher chance to each of those is better, and heal on the torpedo bombers just means you can get more torps in the water and maybe have a higher chance of getting a flood. And then I'm just running a couple economic signals since my commander is actually pretty close to getting 20 points. Alright. So, let's head into battle, see what we get. So as a tier 10 carrier, obviously, you're going to be fighting tier 10s all the time. The distribution of tier 10s to other tiers is kind of a mixed bag. You will sometimes get games where it is a full tier 10 game, and you will sometimes get games where it is a couple tier 10s and mostly tier 9s and 8s. Those don't happen very often. It's usually mostly heavy tier 10 focus as a tier 10 carrier. Big surprise, I know. So I'm going to go in expecting it will be a full tier 10 game. And we'll just kind of work from there. A lot of carriers in queue today, which is a bit odd. As for carriers you will tend to fight, a lot of the meta carriers right now are going to probably be Manfred von Richthofen and Franklin Roosevelt, FDR. MVR and FDR are kind of the more popular. We're seeing a bit more Haku, but for the most part, it's mostly MVR and FDR right now. Ah, look at that, a Haku. So this is one of those. It's mostly there's a few tier 10s, tier 10 battleships. In terms of AA threats, they actually don't have a lot. They've got a Baltimore and a Buffalo, and an Iowa, and that's really it. Those two, and we can still strike them. Obviously, we can get one strike in, but we don't want to hover in the Baltimore and the Buffalo or the Iowa's AA if we can help it. So they're probably not gonna be targets that we want to strike first. We're probably gonna, especially the Yamatos. We're probably gonna want to strike the Yamatos first. They have really bad, notoriously bad AA, so they're gonna be some of our first targets. In terms of destroyers, Yu Yang has decent values, but no defensive to bolster it. Benham has laughably bad AA, and the Benson is kind of the same. Benson has decent AA, but she can have defensive fire to bolster it. I don't think she'll have it. If we spot her and we see she uses defensive fire, we'll just kind of have to respect it until it goes on cooldown. But if she doesn't, then her base values aren't that great. It's only the defensive that can bolster it to an incredible amount. The American destroyers, the tech tree ones, so Benson, Fletcher, and Gearing, their defensive fires were all buffed a while ago to increase the damage increase by 100% as opposed to 50%, and that makes their defensive fires actually very scary when they use them. They can buff their values quite a lot. But if she doesn't have it, then I'm not too concerned about it. Though we got the Haku. We clipped a couple of the Haku's planes, but it looks like she was actually smart enough to lure our fighters into the Baltimore's AA, which is kind of annoying. So there's the Iowa. There's one of the Yamatos. We saw their radar cruiser, one of their radar cruisers. There's their Iowa. Siegfried's coming over here. There's their Benham, actually. So we want to strike him. Benham is a very scary destroyer. Like, an incredibly scary destroyer. If we can get rid of the Benham as quick as possible, that would be ideal for our team. Because that is a very, very powerful torpedo destroyer. I found the Buffalo, too. Okay, we're just going to go for a strike on the Yamato. I don't think we'll get it. Yeah, no, Buffalo just tore our planes up. So, and there's actually a smoke screen over there. I'm assuming that's probably, well, it could be the Yu Yangs. I'm actually going to take torpedo bombers out. I might drop a torpedo spread in there. I could be the Z-23 smoke, actually. I just realized she was in there. But if she did smoke, she should stay in that smoke screen because there's the Buffalo right there. But we will see what she does. And it was actually the Z-23 smoke, so that's actually a really dangerous position for our destroyer, because she's definitely about to get radared by that Buffalo. And judging by the fact that the Haku just landed an incredibly accurate strike, I'm going to go ahead and assume that she is in fact radared right now. Ooh, Buffalo took a massive strike. Nice! Alright, so I'm going to strike... I don't know if I'm going to strike... I want to strike the Yami, but I might strike the Iowa. Okay, the Iowa notices the torp. She's turning hard out. The Yamato is slowing down, so I think she's going to be our target right now. Because she's slowing and turning out to angle against our Slava and Thunder, which means she cannot maneuver too much against our torpedo bombers, because if she turns into our torpedo bombers, she's giving full broadside to our Slava and Thunder. And if she's doing that, she's running the risk of running into more torpedo bombers, into more of our torpedoes. And she's in fact turning hard, and is in fact giving full flat broadside to both our Thunder and Slava. It does look like she managed to dodge the torpedoes, which is kind of annoying, but in doing so, she's giving flat broadside to 2 tier 10 battleships, so hopefully they'll be able to punish her. And in fact, we did hit her with 2 torps in the end, and did cause a flooding. So I might actually... I want to drop this Venom, but he's smoking. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop a fighter here and go dive bomb that Yamato. Because she just used her repair on a flood. Because we just set her flood on her. And the numbers aren't ticking, so she's clearly repaired it. So we want to go hit her with the dive bombers and set a fire now. And she's straight enough from the Iowa that we should be okay. And then I guess we're just gonna get lasered by flag. That's fine. Yeah, we still got a fire on her. Oh, she had repair. I wonder if we hit the Iowa with the Torp instead. Because you can see the numbers aren't ticking, so she's clearly repaired it. I think we must have hit that Iowa with the Flood instead. Or with the Torps instead. I thought we hit the Yamato. That's a bit of an oopsie. That's okay. The Iowa gave too much broadside and got deleted. The Venom looks like he's going to turn back in, so I'm going to come in and maybe try and torp him. And there's their Benson. Ugh, unlucky Torps bed. We know where their Benson is now. We know where their Venom is running. We know their Benson is pushing in. Their Siegfried is kind of pushing up, and he's kind of an issue for us. How much health does that Yang on, actually? Yeah, she's still full health. Yeah, no, she's got a Baltimore for support. That's not gonna work. Siegfried's getting burned down, which is good. We want her out of here. This will give us more opportunities to harass the Yamato and the destroyers. I don't know where the Venom is, but I'm assuming the Venom probably turned it back around. So I'm going to go for the Yamato. Oh, there he is. That Siegfried's still alive, though. Thought he would be dead by now. Okay, there we go. He's dead now. So now we can bomb the Yanny. We actually found the enemy Hockey too. And the fire. I've still got 5 planes. I'm gonna go for the second strike on the Yamato. Maybe set another fire. If she reps, then I can come back with like torps or something. Because there is a Thunderer over here, so I don't want to like come back with dive bombers or something. And we did actually get another fire. All this way. She's not repairing the fire, so she might not have repair. Which is actually really good for us, if she doesn't. So while she's burning to death, I'm actually going to go strike this Baltimore. Because Baltimore is actually quite the threat right now. There's their Yu Yang.
Concentrate fire on the designated target.
Alright, we'll have to kill the Yu Yang first. Alright, there we go. We made the Baltimore sail in a predictable path because of the torpedo bombers. She couldn't turn, otherwise she would give broadside, and we're being shredded right now. But the Yu Yang is almost out of our concealment, so we should go unspotted here in a second. A-bomb, set her on fire. gotta be low. We hit her with 4 more bombs. Can't imagine she has much health left. Oh, she's left her smoke screen spotted. Alright, the Yamato and Republic are pushing up, so we might go after them next. Yu Yang's in a smoke screen. I doubt she'll leave that smoke screen anytime soon. She's probably assuming that we placed fighters over top of her, which we probably should have, but... we know several of their DDs are actually super low. Their Venom is low. I think their Yu Yang has to be low. Their Benson, I'm not sure how much health the Benson has. We haven't seen him in a while. Oh, come on, plane's turn. Oh, that torch spread is awful. Horrible RNG. One. Only one? Yeah. Unlucky RNG on the torque spreads. Ugh. Alright, so they killed the Venom. Yu Yang is still alive somewhere. Benson's still alive somewhere. I'm gonna move my carrier this way. Like this. So I can be more closer to the front line. That will reduce my plane turnaround times quite a bit. And we actually just got another smoke out of the Yu Yang, which is really nice. That's another one of the smoke charges he does not have. Because if he wants to continue to just smoke, that's fine. He's not harassing my team. It's a fire on the Richelieu, which he repped instantly, so we're going to go back and try and set a flood to him. He's left with the Benson, that's nice. They only have one DD left, it's the Yu Yang, and he just smoked up an A. So we know where all their DDs are. We know where their only DD is, and we know that he can't pose a threat to any of our ships at the moment. Gonna try and go toward the Richelieu because she just repped a flood, or a fire from us, so if I could set a flood to her, that would be super good. Nice. Thunder just killed their Haku, but it looks like their Richelieu is actually turning out. So I'm going to go for the Yamato instead. There's the Yu Yang. Okay, Yu Yang is dead. That's good for us. 5 torp hits on the Yamato. No flood, unfortunately, but that's quite a bit of damage on her. So I'll probably focus her next, because she'll probably be low. Yeah, she's actually quite low. We might actually go for the Richelieu, because Yamato is actually giving quite a large amount of broadside to our team. And the Richelieu actually just took a huge smack from the Holland's torpedoes. And I believe is actually flooding. She just repped the flood, so we're going to go for her next. That's fine. So we'll go for this Yamato next instead. This Yamato is actually angling towards our dive bombers, but in doing so is again giving broadside to an enemy battleship. In this case, it's the Slava, which I'm totally okay with. Unlucky. Might actually go hit the Republic next. Because the Yamato is actually quite low and is actually giving quite a large amount of broadside to our battleships at the moment. And their enemy carrier is dead, so probably go drop fighters for my teammates. yammy. Move my carrier hull a little bit closer. There's the Republic.
Battle ends in 5 minutes.
Oh, plane's died. That's unfortunate. Three hits on the Republic. I'll take it. No floods, unfortunately, but she did have to slow down, and so now she's giving quite a large amount of side to the Slava. And because we've moved our carrier hull so close, like, the turnaround times are actually incredibly short right now. So we're already at the Republic again. And because she's actually humping this island, basically, she's not going to see our planes until we're right here, right on top of her. And that's a fire. Was she repaired? Oh, no, she didn't repair it. It's still burning. And I suspect she might burn to death. No, she's got a heal going. That's okay. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Our victory is in sight.
And all's left is their Yamato. Oh, and there we go. Slav killed the Yamato. So, overall, not a bad game. 136k damage. 5th on the team? Yeah, 5th on the team. That's not too terrible. 5th on the team in a carrier is never a bad thing. 136k damage. How much spotting damage do we have? 110k spotting damage. Like, that just goes to show you, you know, we didn't do horribly too much in the early game. It was mostly just spotting and kind of, you know, getting a little bit of chip damage on the destroyers. But as the game went on, we were able to strike some of the more isolated targets. Pretty standard. As the game goes on, carriers slowly get stronger. And this just kind of shows that as the game went on, we were able to do more and strike more and, you know, cause those damage over times. And let's see, how much dot damage did we actually have in that game? 28k? That's not bad. And as you can see, most of that dot damage was fire damage. Yamato, 20k fire damage. Republic, only 6k fire damage before she repped it. Richelieu, she repped ours immediately. Did we actually hit that Iowa with a flood? We did actually. It was the Iowa we actually hit with the torpedo. That was my bad. I actually thought we hit the Yamato, but it was actually the Iowa. So that was a bit of a missed opportunity. If we'd have known we hit the Iowa and that we burned her repair, we could have set a fire on her rather than going for the Yamato and not getting much from it. Because in that case, she just instantly repaired the fire, and we didn't get any damage from it. So, not terrible. So, if you like what I'm doing, like, subscribe, stick around, and in the next videos we'll be talking about some of the premium ships. So the Enterprise, the Saipan, and the Roosevelt.